Imagine walking into a really prestigious art gallery right now.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're there to see the absolute pinnacle of contemporary culture.
Right. The stuff everyone says you just have to see.
Exactly. And you expect the usual array of polite, tasteful scenes, paintings that make you feel sophisticated just for looking at them.
Yeah, nice and quiet.
But instead, you turn a corner and you're confronted by an image so utterly offensive, so deeply shocking to the puzzled sensibilities of the time that gallery administrators literally have to deploy physical guards.
Wait, like actual security?
Actual physical guards. I'm talking about stationing security right in front of the frame to physically prevent enraged, screaming viewers from punching holes in the canvas with their umbrellas and, like, tearing it to shreds.
Oh my God. I mean, that sounds like an avant-garde performance piece designed specifically to provoke a riot. You'd think this was something happening in, I don't know, a gritty underground space today.
You really would. But that visceral, violent reaction actually happened in Paris, at the center of the civilized world, in 1865. Welcome to today's Deep Dive. Our mission today is to explore the life of Edouard Manet. We are going to look at how this highly privileged kid, who actually failed out of his naval exams not once but twice, accidentally sparked a cultural revolution.
Yeah, and eventually became universally known as the father of modernism.
Exactly.
It's just a remarkable trajectory. And I think it fundamentally challenges how we perceive art history, because we tend to view the progression of art as this smooth academic evolution,
Right, like a textbook timeline.
Exactly. But Manet's story proves it was actually a series of explosive, deeply uncomfortable collisions.
And I think that's why this matters so much for you listening today. You might look at fine art and think it's just, stuffy, boring paintings of people in old clothes hanging in quiet rooms.
Right.
But this is a story about how pushing against the status quo, even when absolutely everyone hates you and literally wants to destroy your life's work, can permanently alter how humanity sees the world. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
In the 19th century, classical, tasteful nude paintings were hanging in virtually every museum in Europe.
Right.
It was the absolute standard of high art.
Yeah, they were everywhere.
So why on earth did Manet's painting of a nude woman cause a literal riot? It feels like the 19th century equivalent of the internet ruthlessly canceling someone for crossing a line.
It really does. And to understand that cancellation, we have to look at the suffocating, rigid expectations of the 1860s art world. The establishment, specifically the Paris Salon, had an iron grip on what constituted high art.
Like a monopoly.
A total monopoly.
Yeah.
If you weren't accepted by the Salon, you didn't sell paintings,
Yeah.
and you basically didn't exist as an artist. Now, the Salon loved nudes, but there was this strict, unspoken rule. The nudity had to be shielded by mythology or history.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so you could paint a glowing, soft-focused Venus lounging on a cloud, but you absolutely could not paint a real, contemporary woman sitting on a messy bed in Paris.
Right, the reality was too much.
Exactly. And Manet didn't just cross that line. He obliterated the mythological shield entirely.
So he strips away the fantasy and gives them reality. But before he's, causing riots and giving the establishment a collective heart attack, he's just a wealthy kid failing at the life his parents had meticulously planned out for him.
Yeah, he was definitely not some starving bohemian.
Right. We have to look at his roots to understand where this rebellion comes from, because as you said, he wasn't starving.
Far from it. Manet was born in Paris in 1832 into an incredibly affluent, well-connected family. I mean, we are talking about true bourgeois elite here.
Wow.
They lived in a grand mansion. His mother was actually the goddaughter of the Swedish crown prince.
Wait, really? That's serious connections.
Oh, yeah. And his father was a prominent French judge, like a real man of the establishment who fully expected his son Edouard to pursue a highly respectable, stable career in law.
But Manet completely rejects the legal path, right?
Completely.
So his father, who's trying to salvage his son's respectable future, suggests the Navy. Like, fine, go be a naval officer.
Yeah, a classic backup plan for a rich kid.
Right. So in 1848, Manet sails off to Rio de Janeiro on a training vessel. He crosses the ocean, puts in the time, and then famously fails the Navy examination twice.
Which is just incredible. Those failures must have been a profound embarrassment for his father, but they were a massive stroke of luck for art history.
It's so true.
Because after the second failure, the judge finally throws his hands up and relents, allowing Manet to pursue a formal art education. So from 1850 to 1856, Manet studies under a highly respected academic painter named Thomas Couture.
Okay.
And at the same time, Manet spends his free hours wandering the halls of the Louvre, meticulously copying Renaissance and Baroque masters like Titian and Velázquez.
Now, this relationship with his teacher, Couture, reveals a fascinating contradiction in the sources. Couture actively encouraged his students to go out and paint contemporary life.
Yeah.
But then when Manet actually does exactly that, Couture is utterly horrified.
Oh, he hated it.
Yeah. Manet brings him a painting called The Absinthe Drinker, which focuses on this gritty, lower-class subject, and his teacher is disgusted. He calls it degenerate. It's like a modern musician learning their craft by playing classical Mozart, but then performing it with distorted punk rock guitars.
That's exactly it.
Wait, so his teacher literally tells him to paint modern life, but then gets disgusted when he actually paints the real, gritty modern life. What was Couture expecting?
Well, Couture was expecting the illusion of modern life, not the actual reality of it.
Of course.
Yeah, the Academy wanted contemporary scenes that were elevated, moralizing, or romanticized. They wanted peasants who looked noble and clean,
The Hollywood version of poverty.
Precisely. But Manet, who was heavily influenced by the new realist movement initiated by Gustave Courbet, he gave them the unvarnished truth. He painted beggars, street singers, Romani people, and cafe patrons drinking themselves into a stupor with absinthe.
Wow.
He completely abandoned the smooth transitions and meticulous details of academic painting for just raw, harsh realities.
And that punk rock defiance is the exact catalyst for the masterworks that tore the Parisian art establishment apart. Let's look at the three major breakthrough scandals that basically birth modern art.
Okay.
First up, in 1862, he exhibits Music in the Tuileries. What makes this painting such an offense to the public eye?
So visually, it was a total shock. It's a dense portrayal of a crowd at the Tuileries Garden in Paris.
Right.
But the public was trained to expect finely detailed, almost photographic brushwork depicting classical heroes.
Right.
Manet gave them thick, visible brushstrokes that looked completely crude and unfinished to the trained eye. And to make matters worse, he didn't paint historical icons. He just painted his own social circle.
Just his buddies hanging out.
Exactly. He included the poet Charles Baudelaire, the composer Jacques Offenbach, his own family, and even painted himself into the crowd.
And the sources say people literally threatened to destroy the painting because it featured regular people enjoying a weekend picnic instead of, like, Greek gods doing something heroic. That's wild.
It really upset them.
But Music in the Tuileries was just a warm-up. The real explosion happens a year later, in 1863, with The Luncheon on the Grass, or Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe. The official Paris Salon takes one look at it and flat out rejects it.
Yeah, and the Salon was particularly brutal that year. They rejected over half of the 5,000 submissions.
Half.
Yeah, which sparked a massive outcry among the artistic community. It got so bad that Emperor Napoleon III had to step in and initiate a parallel exhibition called the Salon des Refusés, the Salon of the Rejected.
Wow.
And that is where Manet finally showed the luncheon.
And the painting itself is a total provocation. You have this completely nude woman casually sitting outdoors, having a picnic in the woods, looking totally relaxed, alongside two fully dressed, very modern Parisian men.
Right, in their contemporary suits.
Yeah. The juxtaposition broke people's brains, and one critic sneered that the brushwork looked like it was done with a floor mop. Let's pause on that insult for a second. Why did it look like it was painted with a floor mop? What was he doing technically that angered them so much?
So, that insult gets to the very heart of Manet's technical revolution. For centuries, the academic studio method involved building up a painting really slowly.
Okay.
You started with a dark background and applied successive, thin, translucent layers of paint, they called them glazes, to create a deep, glowing illusion of three-dimensional space.
Like looking through a window.
Right. But Manet threw that entire process out the window. He championed a method called alla prima, or painting wet on wet in a single sitting. He used thick, opaque paint directly on a light-colored background.
So instead of light bouncing through dozens of thin layers to create depth, it's just hitting thick, solid paint sitting right on the surface.
Precisely. And to the critics, this lack of blending looked sloppy, rushed, and flat. It destroyed the illusion of depth. Manet didn't want you to look through the painting like it was a magic window into another world. He wanted you to look at the painting and recognize that it was pigment smeared on a flat canvas.
He's basically shattering the illusion of the medium itself. And he doubled down on this in 1865 with his most explosive scandal, Olympia.
Oh yeah, the big one.
This is the painting that required armed guards. He essentially takes Titian's revered Renaissance masterpiece, the Venus of Urbino, and paraphrases it, but he strips away all the mythological grace. He paints an unabashed, confrontational, unapologetic prostitute.
And the visual impact of Olympia cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
She's wearing just a few highly specific items, an orchid in her hair, a black velvet ribbon around her neck, and mule slippers.
Just enough to make her look naked, not nude.
Exactly. These didn't cover her. They aggressively accentuated her nakedness and signaled her comfortable status as a high-class courtesan. Plus, her body is thin and angular, which completely countered the soft, voluptuous, idealized bodies the Salon favored.
Right.
And going back to his flat painting style, her skin looks stark and washed out under harsh, almost artificial lighting.
I read a brilliant analogy for this. Imagine the difference between a high-budget 3D Pixar movie with perfect shading, soft shadows, and incredible depth versus a 2D anime where the colors are just flat, solid blocks with harsh outlines. The Salon desperately wanted Pixar, and Manet handed them anime.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. Manet was heavily inspired by Japanese woodblock prints, which were flooding into Paris at the time.
Right, the Japanism trend.
Yeah, and those prints relied on bold, flat areas of color and strong outlines without traditional European shading. By applying that flat graphic style to a nude woman, he made her feel jarringly, uncomfortably real.
And the psychological details in the room are just as loaded as her body. In Titian's original Renaissance painting, there is a loyal sleeping dog at the foot of the bed, a symbol of fidelity. Manet replaces the loyal dog with an alert, arched, sexually rebellious black cat.
Oh, the cat is iconic.
And Olympia also has a fully dressed black servant bringing her a massive bouquet of flowers from an unseen suitor. Historians point out that this specific inclusion exploited the racist, pseudoscientific theories of 19th century France that wrongly associated black people with hypersexuality, which further cemented Olympia's illicit environment.
Yeah, he was definitely pushing every button.
And then there is her gaze. She isn't looking away modestly. She is staring dead center at the viewer, like right at you.
And a prominent critic at the time completely lost his mind over her left hand, too, which rests flat on her leg. In Titian's classical work, that hand placement is understood as a gentle gesture of modesty.
Right.
But in Manet's painting, the critic described it as shamelessly flexed, calling it a deliberate mockery of female virtue. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Manet wasn't just slapping thick paint on a canvas to upset art critics.
What was the goal then?
He was forcing the polite French public to stare directly at the reality of prostitution and the complex transactional roles of women in contemporary society. He was dragging the open secrets of Paris out from behind closed doors and hanging them right in the gallery.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. He is staging this massive societal critique, but structurally, he's just remixing respected Renaissance masters like Titian and Raphael. Do the sources suggest he was intentionally trolling the art establishment, or did he genuinely think this was just the logical next step for art history?
The tragedy, or perhaps the irony of Manet, is that it seems to be the latter.
Really? He wasn't trolling.
No, he deeply, desperately craved the approval of the Salon. He wanted the medals. He wanted to be the celebrated official artist of his generation. But he had a fundamental, uncompromising vision of what art had to be.
So he just couldn't help himself.
Yeah, he genuinely believed he was doing the honorable work of updating the old masters for the 19th century. When the public reacted with hatred and mockery, he was reportedly baffled and deeply hurt by it.
That is such a fascinating contradiction. The guy who is viewed as this aggressive cultural bomb thrower just wants a gold star from the teacher.
Pretty much.
And that tension segues perfectly into his personal life, because while his public life was defined by loud, explosive gallery rioting scandals, his private life was defined by quiet tensions, intense loyalties, and these hidden complexities. We need to talk about the massive family mystery.
Yes. So in 1863, the exact same year he shocked Paris with the luncheon on the grass, Manet married a woman named Suzanne Leenhoff. She was a Dutch-born piano teacher 2 years older than him, and they had actually been romantically involved in secret for an entire decade before tying the knot.
But the secret romance isn't even the crazy part. Years prior, Suzanne had originally been employed by Manet's father, Auguste, the strict, respectable judge, to teach the young Manet boys how to play piano.
Right.
In 1852, long before she married Edouard, she gave birth to a son out of wedlock named Leon. And the mystery that historians still argue over today is the true identity of Leon's father. It might have been Edouard Manet, or it might have been Manet's own father, Auguste.
Yeah, it's wild. There's significant historical speculation that Suzanne was originally the father's mistress.
Which is just wow.
It's like This really profound, almost uncomfortable secret resting right at the center of his domestic life. But whether Leon was his son or his half-brother, the boy was clearly deeply important to Edouard.
Oh, absolutely.
Leon posed for Manet 18 different times over the years. He appears in well-known pieces like Boy Carrying a Sword and Boy Blowing Bubbles. Manet treated him like family, even though his precise biological role was deliberately obscured.
So his home life is this tangled web of bourgeois secrets. And then he steps out into his professional circle, and things are just as emotionally complicated. Enter Berthe Morisot. She is a brilliant painter who draws Manet into the tight-knit circle of artists at the Batignolles Café, the group that would eventually become known as the Impressionists.
Yeah, we're talking about heavyweights like Degas, Monet, and Renoir.
Exactly.
And Morisot and Manet had this intensely reciprocating relationship. As a peer, she finally convinced him to try plein air painting, which means leaving the studio and painting outdoors in natural light.
Getting out of the stuffy room.
Right. He incorporated her lighter techniques, and in return, he painted numerous stunningly intimate portraits of her. But the tension here is that in 1874, Morisot became Manet's sister-in-law by marrying his younger brother Eugene.
Right.
Looking at their correspondence and the sheer emotional weight of those portraits, historians have debated for decades whether there was a deeply repressed romantic love between Edouard and Berthe.
You look at the dark, piercing eyes in those portraits he painted of her before the marriage, and you can practically hear the unspoken words.
Yeah, they are very intense.
But what really strikes me about his relationship with the broader Impressionist group is his sheer stubbornness. I mean, he anticipated their entire style. He heavily influenced their techniques. They viewed him as a leader.
Definitely.
And yet, he fiercely refused to exhibit in any of their independent Impressionist shows. It's like an indie film director who invents a gritty new genre of cinema, inspires a whole generation of filmmakers, but desperately refuses to take his movie to the Sundance Film Festival because he only cares about winning an Oscar.
That's a great way to put it.
Why on earth did he resist the Impressionist label so hard when they were literally the only people championing his work?
It all comes back to his upbringing and that desire for official validation we talked about earlier. Despite his rebellious art, Manet was fundamentally a bourgeois Parisian. He didn't want to be seen as the ringleader of a radical rogue splinter group.
So he didn't want the rebel label.
Exactly. He believed that the real battle for the soul of art had to be fought and won on the establishment's turf at the Salon. Stylistically, he kept his distance too. While he adopted their lighter colors and looser strokes, he absolutely refused to abandon his distinctive use of black paint.
Oh, which the Impressionists hated, right?
True Impressionists considered it a cardinal sin. They believe shadows are made of color, not black. Manet also always returned to the controlled environment of his studio. He never fully surrendered to the purely outdoor, spontaneous method of, like, Monet or Pissarro.
He was a man of the city through and through. He didn't want to paint haystacks. He wanted to paint Paris.
Exactly.
And his obsession with documenting the unvarnished truth of his era didn't stop at bohemian cafes or art world politics. As he got older, the gritty reality of his era became inescapable. War literally showed up on his doorstep, and eventually his own body began to betray him.
Yeah. Manet felt a deep responsibility to update the traditional genre of history painting. He didn't want to paint ancient battles. He painted the news. When a naval skirmish in the American Civil War literally spilled over to the French coast, he went out and painted it.
Wow, just like a photojournalist?
Basically. But his most significant, dangerous political work was a series of massive canvases depicting the execution of Emperor Maximilian.
This was a highly volatile subject. Maximilian was a Habsburg emperor that Napoleon III had essentially installed as a puppet in Mexico. When the French abruptly withdrew their military support, Maximilian was captured and executed by a Mexican firing squad. Manet painted 3 massive versions of this brutal event.
And he composed it in a way that was a direct, chilling indictment of formalized slaughter and of French foreign policy. He even dressed the Mexican firing squad in uniforms that closely resembled French soldiers.
Oh, wow. That is bold.
Very bold. The political critique was so severe and so deeply embarrassing to the government that neither the paintings nor a printed lithograph of the subject were permitted to be shown in France. It stands as a direct historical ancestor to Picasso's Guernica.
And he didn't just critique war from his studio, he actually lived it. During the Franco-Prussian War, he served in the National Guard, enduring the freezing, brutal siege of Paris right alongside his friend Degas.
Yeah, they were right in it.
He survives the war, but it's his final internal battle that I find the most poignant. In his mid-40s, at the height of his intellectual powers, he developed severe shooting pains and partial paralysis in his legs.
He initially thought it was a manageable circulatory issue and sought out hydrotherapy treatments, but the reality was much darker and ultimately fatal. He was actually suffering from locomotor ataxia.
Oh, no.
Yeah, which is a devastating neurological condition caused by advanced, untreated syphilis. His health deteriorated rapidly over the next few years.
And by April of 1883, the complications from syphilis and rheumatism had severely restricted his mobility and eventually caused gangrene. His left foot actually had to be amputated.
It's awful.
The shock to his system was too much, and he died just 11 days later. He was only 51 years old. But right before the end, when he could barely stand, he managed to complete his last major masterwork, a bar at the Folies Bergère.
That painting is incredible.
This incredibly complex, bustling, melancholic reflection on modern urban life, and yet his very last paintings, created as his world physically shrank to the size of his sick-room bedroom, were 20 small, intimate works of flowers and glass vases. The sources share this profound quote from his final days. "An artist can say everything he has to say with flowers, fruit, and clouds. He spends his whole life painting these massive, controversial, riot-inciting canvases." He paints all these massive, controversial canvases, and his final act is painting simple flowers in a glass vase. Is that him giving up, or is it him finally finding peace with what art is supposed to be?
Looking at the total arc of his life, it is absolutely not him giving up. It is the ultimate distillation of his entire artistic philosophy.
How so?
Well, Manet consistently argued that the subject matter itself was secondary to the physical act of painting. Whether he was looking at a scandalous nude, a political execution, or just a few white lilacs in a glass of water, his goal was exactly the same.
To capture the light.
Yes, to capture the immediate truth of the light, the color, and the fleeting moment. Those simple flowers are a pure, quiet demonstration of his lifelong belief that the magic of art comes from the paint itself, not the grand historical narrative behind it.
And those final, quiet flower paintings really cement his legacy. He wasn't just a cultural provocateur throwing metaphorical bombs at the Salon to get a reaction. He was a master technician who completely re-engineered the mechanics of how paint is applied to a canvas.
Exactly. He is universally regarded by historians as the father of modernism, not just for what he chose to paint, but how he painted it. By rejecting the dark backgrounds and the slow, glazed layering, and by championing that direct, opaque a la prima style, he changed the trajectory of visual culture.
He made people look at the canvas itself.
Right. He drew attention to the flatness of the canvas. He made the viewer aware of the medium. That method was wholly adopted by the Impressionists and became the foundational standard for generations of modern artists that followed.
And the modern art market certainly recognizes his genius today. In 2014, one of his late paintings, Le Printemps, sold at auction for $65.1 million.
Wow.
Which is just staggering when you think about how his early works couldn't even get past a Salon jury without being mocked as the work of a floor mop.
It's the ultimate validation of his vision. He took massive career-ending risks with the public. He rejected the safe, humanistic, historical subjects and firmly established that the messy, unvarnished reality of modern urban life was completely acceptable material for high art.
So as we wrap up, I want you, the listener, to reflect on this journey. Manet's true genius wasn't just that he painted a scandalous picnic or a confrontational gaze. It was that he gave all future generations of artists the absolute permission to paint the reality of now.
Yeah.
He told the world that we don't have to hide behind the sanitized myths of the ancient past to find beauty or truth. We can find it right in front of us in a crowded cafe, on a city balcony, or in a simple glass vase on a bedside table.
He dragged the art world into the modern era, kicking and screaming the entire way.
He really did. And it leaves me with this lingering thought to chew on. Manet's greatest works, the paintings that define the foundation of modern art, were initially viewed as literal, crude garbage. They were mocked by the critics, rejected by the gatekeepers, and physically threatened by the general public.
True.
Look around at the culture today. What heavily criticized, thoroughly misunderstood piece of modern art, music, or media, something people are actively trying to dismiss or cancel right now, might actually be the undisputed masterpiece hanging in the digital Louvre of tomorrow?
We might need to deploy the guards just to keep an open mind.
Until next time, keep diving deep.